is that's me. I'll be the doctor to
Yeah.
the doctor is in.
So people were mad at me, man. Listen, and I got to ask you the same question too, because Jeff and I last week we got to rap about it, and we talked about where does the blame or responsibility lie. I think it's kind of asinine to get on here and talk about who should be fired in the middle of a purposeful rebuild, in the middle of a purposeful tank. Listen, if we saw this team do some things to try and make sure that they could secure a good draft pick to get Cade Cunningham, and then we saw them do some things in the draft where we saw there's some pretty nice talent up here, like Jaden Ivey and others. We saw them kind of go out of their way almost to make sure that they could be players in this thing. Why can't people tell that though their aspirations to start the season was to be competitive every night, the injuries have completely derailed that, irregardless of anything else we want to talk about? We'll get into that. So
I mean, you can't tell people. Never mind. Go ahead. We'll chop it up.
It's leading up. Look, bro. Once you get there and you realize, like even Coach Casey has come out, and it is rare you see this, where a coach will come out where the notion was compete, and then they come out and say, you know what, the rest of the season is just about development, player development, making sure the guys are getting better. We're trying to make sure these young guys are taking steps forward.
Dwane said that.
Dwane said that.
You know who else said that?
Yeah, take over,
we
Rod.
Did. We did. We told you that. We've been saying that for what, 2 or 3 weeks now? Okay. All right, give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds here.
I just don't get it, man. I don't get it. And so it's like, all right, we got Casey talking about development year. We have the players now talking about, from game to game to game, they're just focusing on getting better. I know Stewart talked about the fact that they know what to do, but that they have to go out there and execute. I was just telling people, Rod, that, even the players are saying that they kind of know what they do. They know what to do. Stewart was very, very demonstrative about it. And we talked about this. Stewart is not a liar. So what I realized is this. There has to be some type of education then in how to execute. It's not that you just know what to do when you go out there and do it. Cade Cunningham came into this league and we knew he was going to be special, and he showed right away he was special. But even he said between his first and second year, there was absolutely no education other than being out there on the court that could have prepared him for how to even prepare for his second season. And that's what I see these guys going through. When you lose a Cade Cunningham, when you get shuttered in the beginning of the season with injuries to basically all your bigs, that's a recipe for disaster. And as soon as that happened, Rod, we talked about it early in the season. Remember in preseason, I was like, bro, are they not running any pick and rolls? I was like, the offense looks weird. Like, I don't know what's going on. Then we started figuring out guys are injured. Bigs are injured. When Bags got hurt in preseason or media day, the open run, we started realizing quickly, wait a second. Though they've made some additions, this team is right back to what we saw theoretically last season when they didn't have the pick and roll. And we began to say, they're going to struggle. I remember saying it, and you were like, well, who's missing? Bags is missing. That's right. They're not running it. Stu, up to that point, hadn't shown it. Duran was still kind of raw. They weren't trusting him with as much as they are now. So, I don't know, man. I wanted to get your breakdown on this because the people that were mad at me, we did this breakdown of responsibility because regardless of if you think someone should be fired or not, obviously there's responsibilities.
Who are you firing? Who's getting fired?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know, man. But look, I said Troy Weaver should handle 50% of the responsibility. It's going to be on him to continue to assess and make sure that this roster next year is where it has to be. Now, listen, this is where the people got mad at me. They're like, man, you got to be getting paid by Casey. I'm like, y'all don't understand. If this is next year, a lot of these percentages are going to flip. The expectation that I have on this team next year is different. The expectation I had on them this year was player development mainly. That was the chief thing. And I like what Ivy and Duran have looked like. I like where Killian has looked. I like what Killian has looked like. Anybody else we need to, I like what Stewart has been doing. Saddiq Bey is the only one that people are talking about, and we got numbers on Saddiq Bey. We got some good numbers on him. Them shooting numbers looking good over the last 10. You know what I mean?
But see, it's people are in this, what have you done for me lately, first of all? And then we don't care about injuries. We're about the end result. So Bags is injured. That's why you got Nerlens. Well, is Nerlens the same player as Bags? No. Okay, Cade is injured. Well, that's why you have backups, because injuries happen. Is Killian the same player
I was just
as
about to say,
Cade?
Killian is just like Cade.
I mean,
You know,
same kind of
just like him.
hairstyle, maybe complexion might be the only two things that they have similar. He's left-handed.
Kind of blown out like that, you know.
He's not even right-handed like Cade. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what people want, but part of the fandom is definitely seeing what you want to see and having your agenda. So as much as fans want to say we have agendas and we are carrying Troy's water or Casey's water or whoever's water, they're carrying their own water. They bring their own baggage to the discussion, and they don't want to see things, or they want to have the viewpoint that they want to have, and they have an agenda the same sort of way. So that's why I try not to read the comments, or I understand where people are coming from in the first sentence. Casey needs to be fired. Okay, well, I see where you're going with this.
Jeremy Grant needed to be traded because he was in the way of Saddiq Bey. That's what that said last year. We said, I don't think that's necessarily true. We looked at the numbers last year. Jeremy Grant was a black hole in offense who shot 40% from three post All-Star break on over 6 attempts a game, bro.
But this is the Jeremy Grant thing is also, look at the play here. You get Grant for cap space.
Yeah.
You flip Grant for a draft pick. Cap space that expires every year.
Yeah.
For draft pick that builds your roster. He's not fitting with what you're trying to do. And if you're going ultra youth movement because you really want to rebuild this thing and you really want Cade to be the face and the everything of this, then you have to make that trade. You get a center who's 18. And if that's the target that they had the entire time, did they win the Jeremy Grant trade? The only reason that people are going to say that that the Pistons lost the Jeremy Grant trade is because they lost that game. But if you look at Jalen Duren objectively and say, is he in the long run, is he going to be a bigger asset than Jeremy Grant is and would have been? If you can't say that, then you have an agenda and we can't talk. I don't have time to have that discussion.
People that got mad at me on Twitter because, we've talked about this for a long time. We said, listen, if Jeremy Grant's going to go, it's not something that I personally wanted to see because I believed he was in the trajectory of becoming the player that we're starting to see him be in Portland. And we actually saw those stats second half of last season. If people go and look at it, just search the aggregate stats, look at his stats from the second half of last season when the Pistons played demonstrably better. He and Cade did kind of work, but it was clear that for this team to get better, whether they actually showed they could work or not, the team needed a lot more talent. And so if you're going to trade to Jeremy Grant, who we knew Weaver liked, you got to do what you see this team did to come away with an Alec Burks and a Duren. If it's just those two players, if it's just Duren, man, for what this team needs, that's an awesome trade. But for the fans who continue to state things like, get Jeremy Grant out of here, Jeremy Grant's not valuable, Jeremy Grant's not this, not that, it's like the assessment eye to just say get him out of here because he's not good, even though he showed what he is. Troy Weaver didn't say, let's get him out of here because he's not good. He was like, I see a way that we can really take this team to the next step. And I think that's where, if I remember last season we were talking about the Jeremy Grant deal and people kind of got bent out of shape that he wasn't traded at the deadline. We kept saying, look, this is not over. He can get to the draft and actually have a lot more control because that's when people, to me, are more desperate. At the deadline is when contenders are desperate, but there's a lot more realistically for them to kind of pick and choose from. At the deadline, when you're on the clock and you're at the draft and you're on the clock, you got to do what you got to do. And those teams sitting there with all that capital and the assets and the cap space, they're just like, hey, I'll do whatever you want. Just give me that draft pick.
Well, here you go. Here's the other piece of this. And this is where the Troy Weaver people are going to go bananas. When is Jeremy's contract up? It's after this year.
Yeah, after
he's an unrestricted free agent after this year. So you have to, in a year where the free agent market is going to be bananas.
Ooh.
There's so many people in the free agent market. Do you want to hold on to Jeremy Grant?
His price tag
Possibly let him go out and command something ridiculous in terms of his contract, or get the guaranteed asset now. If he's an unrestricted free agent, and who's got a ton of cap space next year?
Yeah,
the Pistons. So they can play the market with that cap space, and possibly, if they wanted to, they could bid to bring him back. If that was something that they said they wanted to do, bring him back at a reasonable number when you know what the market looks like, and you got Jalen Duren out of the deal, and you lost this year. But this year was, we said, was going to be a developmental year, or maybe because of the tenor of the league was going to be a play in, maybe. So you didn't throw away this year, but you said, give me this asset for the long-term reconstruction now, and then we can come back and revisit this Jeremy Grant when we know what the market looks like and what we're going to pay him, because he was making what, 20? So so what did you do with that 20 million? Well, you went out and got Boyan, and you signed Boyan to an extension too. So now, is that money better spent on Boyan with the opportunity to go back and get Jeremy? You could have both of them under team control.
On one deal.
So Troy Weaver is very much playing chess in this, because he got the asset. He gets to see what the market looks like. You get Boyan, you see that he likes it here, and you get him on a 2-year extension. That dude is out here. People who are questioning what Troy Weaver is doing are not paying attention to what could be worse. Yeah. So you're going to say you trade Killian now, or trade Killian at the beginning of the year, or even last year when it's at a low value? No good GM does that. You let him play his way into some value, and either he sticks with you, or you can flip him for something else that another team is going to need a good backup point guard. That's the vision that people don't have when they try to assess what Troy Weaver's doing.
Yep. And when we tried to tell people that this was a necessary evil, we also told people the drawback was going to be the horrendous aspect that it could have, or impact that it's going to have on the defense. And so what I believe that the trade exposed in seeing Jeremy Grant in this latest game was what the Pistons, maybe some aspect of what they need to go after. If this is a year where you wanted to see, let's see if this team got some punch and some fight to them, and they took some injuries and whatnot that kind of set them back. You as Troy Weaver, that's why I said 50% of responsibility. He's going to oversee this thing. He's going to look, and there's a Jeremy Grant size hold on this team on defense. And I believe that they're going to get that fixed. They're going to get that figured out. If their aspect of this rebuild is about restoring to what Detroit teams have always been known about, you're going to see it. And you see it in flashes, especially as they continue to put Hamidou Diallo in the games. This guy is complete, just energy, scrap, hustle, heart. People in the arena, I just wanted to be able to, he wasn't even in my notes, I just wanted to be able to call him, shout him out. Because even people in the arena are like, yo, people on the floor, they're like, he's just doing all the little things necessary to get it going. But in the rest of my blame, where people got mad at me is I said 10% of the blame was on Casey, or responsibility. Does that mean I think he's perfect? No. But even if I believed Casey to be perfect coach this year in terms of responsibility for where they need to go moving forward and for what's going on this year, I don't believe that he's going to affect winning more than if the roster makeup, in terms of how much talent they had here and the positions. Remember, they're still shuffling the roster, trying to figure out the talent that they have here, how it best fits. You know what I mean? If those things were figured out, and if the injuries were not here, if this was next season, I'm saying minimum 25 to 35 to 40% of the responsibilities on Casey now to go and manage a full complement of roster, like Troy Weaver believed they had in the beginning of the year. He said, "This is the year. This is ground zero. This is the season now." He was like, it wasn't fair to Troy Weaver beforehand. Now, if we trust Troy Weaver in his assessment, and he's saying prior it wasn't fair to really bring a full assessment down on him. Well, that's what I'm taking when I hear him say that. That's if we believe and we look at the fact that Troy Weaver can flip Jeremy Grant for 6 players, why wouldn't we believe that he's saying this is not the right roster to really judge any coach over as it relates to wins and losses. It's got to be about how these players are taking steps forward. Now, if people think he's putting them in their best spots or not, we all sat on this show. We did our preseason, predictions and things that we thought these guys would do, and people thought we were being a little generous then. These players are exceeding that.
Mm-hmm.
Is hitting the mark that we thought he could hit. He started off horrendous, but he's gotten it under control. He's gotten it back, sitting in those press conferences and hearing the coach talk, hearing these players talk about it. I don't know, man. It's just something a little bit different to this year. Like I said, if it's next season and they're not competing necessarily for playing based on the additions that they may have, yeah, I bumped that percentage up. But I wanted to get your take on it in terms of just overall responsibility. How do you break down that pie chart between the players, the coaches, and Troy Weaver in terms of who you believe has the biggest responsibility in terms of figuring this thing out going forward?
No, I think figuring it out, I'd give Troy probably even 60 to 70%. He's got all of these guys, and he's assembled all of these pieces together for. And we always use the analogy of Troy does the grocery shopping, but Casey does the cooking. So it is about seeing what these guys have, what their versatility level is. Can Saddiq function with the second group? Is Hami what's the value there? Is he always going to be just an athletic spark plug guy, or does he have something else that's there? What is Kevin Knox? What is Alec Burks? So all of this is just the shopping, and you just got to see where these pieces fit, what the best combinations for these guys are going to be. In injuries, you can't factor that stuff in. You don't know that Cade's going to be hurt for that. And I mean, even worse than all of this is the people who say, well, he's on a vegetarian diet or vegan diet, then that's what's causing all of his injuries. I mean, for real, is that what we're doing? No, it's injuries happen across the league in any sport. The injuries are going to happen, and you can't predict it. And all you can do is adjust to what's there. So it's I think it's on Troy to kind of figure some of this stuff out and just to get the right guys in the right spots. But it's going to be on Casey to kind of plug those things in and see, okay, is this stuff going to work? Let's see what the long-term value is going to be for any of these guys. And that's just, so Casey, I might give him a little bit more of a responsibility because he has to test those things and he has to do player groupings and combinations that tell him something. Yeah. So if people have questions about that, then it really is just, hey, it's a test. That's why you've got guys and you've got minutes to burn. But it is very much we're going to just see what these guys have. And people can't get bent out of shape about that. That's the problem here.
That's the key. That's the key. I think that might be the disconnect, is that we kind of came into this season, even if they were going to be competitive, saying that it was going to be a still bleak season on wins, under 30 wins, see what you got, see what's up with Duran, see what's up with Ivy. Yep. And I think that from that perspective, it's like, okay, we understand this is development year, even if they're going to be competitive, because they have to develop these rookies. This is about, everyone said it before this season, they are still 2 or 3 years away. Everyone said that their window was a 2 or 3 years away window. Now, I do get it. Troy has this way of causing fireworks, and where there's fireworks, there's going to be a party and celebration. So when you go and you trade Jeremy Grant, then you go and you trade that pick with the Knicks, and then you go and trade with the Knicks again, and you're just fleecing them. And you're getting players like Jaden Ivey, who we didn't think we were going to get. We sat here and said, yo, we're going to need some combinations of things to happen for us to get Jaden Ivey, based on all of the reports that we were hearing. Then you get Jaden Ivey. You have, Jalen Duran. Then we start to realize this guy is going to be something special. Then you get Bojan Bogdanovic. I do see how, and then Casey coming out, somebody saying Troy Weaver's coming out as well, and then the injuries absolutely derail. I believe that there's people who want, blame. They want somebody to blame. They want something to be like, yo, what took us out? And a lot of times, I think that injuries can sound like an excuse, but it's just like, it's Cade.
It's what it is. It's what it is.
Several times it's Isaiah Stewart for a stretch. It's not even like we're sitting here talking about, well, Nerlens Noel got hurt.
Exactly.
We're talking about the starters. We're talking about the guys who made that 10-14 run happen last year in a year where they only won 23 games. But I digress. I'm, Jeff.
Speak on it. No, speak. Don't even digress. Just speak on it, because that's the truth of the situation. Is that you're the Pelicans now with Zion out. What does that mean for them? I mean, it's going to be huge for them. When the Warriors were rolling and Clay got hurt, well, that's kind of one of your main pieces. You kind of need that guy if you're going to be
still keep rolling through teams with all their guys hurt.
Yeah, that's. But again, that's not the way the NBA works. But that's the way that fans want to think, and this because it's time, then they should start winning, and that's not how the league works. It's just not that simple. That because you want them to win, then they're going to win. If that was the case, DraftKings and FanDuel would be out of this world. But that's not how it works.
All right, listen. Saddiq Bey, there's a couple more things here. I gotta ask you some questions on Saddiq Bey, and then Marvin Bagley and what it means for the future. But Saddiq Bey, his last 10 games, I have it up. I don't know if that's considered cherry picking or not, but I wanted to give him some time to get comfortable in the bench, get comfortable in his new role, get comfortable with the roster around him changing, and seeing how he continues to just, respond to the fluctuations and ups and downs. Over the last 10 games, I wish the scoring average was up, but I get it when you're trying to fit in 2 shot attempts. You're not necessarily force-fed them. He's averaged, though, 12 points per game, 4.1 rebounds, and about 1 assist in his last 10 games. What's interesting here is that everybody continued to lament and harp at the fact that his field goal percentage and his shooting was just down. He was unreliable from 3. People were saying it looked like he was kind of forcing or jacking sometimes. But over these last 10, Rod, he is shooting. What do you think his 3-point percentage is over the last 10?
I say 38.
39.6%.
39.6. We'll take it.
Yeah, he has only a couple games in there where he threw up some duds, and in those games, he only put up 2 3-point attempts. In all the other games, 40%, 50%, 40%, 50%, 54.5%. Then he had a couple duds, 28.6, 25, then another 50%. He's putting up 5 attempts, 4 attempts, 5 attempts, 6 attempts, 11 attempts. He's putting up almost 5 attempts per game. He's hit 40% of those threes, man. He's really starting to settle into like we saw last season. And what happened last season was the same. He started off struggling. Then the shooting numbers started to go up before the scoring average exploded. And then what did we start seeing? We started seeing Saddiq Bey. Oh, man, he got 20 points tonight. Oh, man, he got 18. Oh, 50 points. Awesome. Like, look at the box score around that run. And I believe that we could see another type of run like that for Saddiq Bey as he's settling in and getting more comfortable. I just wanted to get your thoughts on Saddiq Bey's last 10. I know that you got to have a little bit different perspective of Saddiq Bey your last year covering the team. And so I definitely wanted to make sure I asked this question to you before I asked it to Jeff.
No, but Saddiq is very much I'm not going to say he's streaky, but he needs to get into a comfort zone with his play. And when he's shooting well, he's going to continue to shoot well. And I don't know what throws that off. It could be rhythm. It could be any number of things. But he's had slow starts to years. We've seen that before. And even last year when people just kind of said, that's a sophomore jinx. He's not quite what he was. That was just a flash in the pan. But you can see when he's in his element and he's comfortable that he can play and he can be effective. And it's just the people around him. But he can be a good 3-point shooter, and you're pointing out those numbers. But he just needs to be comfortable, and he can be your guy. He doesn't have to be your number 1 guy, but he can play off of just about anybody with his skill set. And so I'm not worried about it. I was never worried about Saddiq. There are other guys lesser guys that you can worry about.
You've been on record too, saying you're not worried about it. You said it's the way he works. You said it's what's up top for him. You said
that's all it is. And he just needs to be centered and get into a good flow and a good groove. And then that's just a guy you don't worry about. And we've talked about just keeping him out of the gym. It's not a lack of effort. It's not a work ethic thing with him. It's just a rhythm thing that sometimes the rim seems a lot bigger than normal. But even in all of this hemming and hawing that people have had, let's take a bigger sample size. This is 19 games. 19 games. He's averaging 13 points, and
It goes up. The stats improve with the wider sample size again.
3.7 boards and 35% from three. So that includes a little bit more of the slump. But this is a 19 game sample size and only 4 starts in that span. So people want to worry about a lot of things. Just go worry. Go do what you do.
Have you worried about, because you said something interesting. I get in the beginning of the season there was a little bit of concern. Now you didn't necessarily worry about them. But is there a different level with Saddiq Bey over these last 10 to 20 games where you're just like, Saddiq Bey is doing his thing? Because when you look at the numbers, you look at the box score, you look at his impact on the game. I've done this with other players who are like, yo, these guys, when they're not scoring, they aren't doing anything. When they're streaky or not hitting threes, they're not having really a large impact on the game. With Saddiq Bey, and I get it takes time for trends to kind of burn out or to turn over. Over the last 10 to 20 games, I haven't had or even felt the same sense of complaint. I don't even know what you want to call it about Saddiq Bey. It's just been, like you said, no worries. You plug him into the spot, he's going to hit a few threes. He's going to battle for a few rebounds. He's going to get to the free throw line. And I've seen him dribbling a little bit more lately, too. Casey said last year he wanted to see if he could handle the rock, getting some pick and roll situations. And I know he needs to improve ball handling and footwork beyond foot speed. I don't believe he necessarily needs to improve. Obviously, everybody wants to get faster, but his footwork to me is what I've been looking at the most. As that's gotten better, his work in the paint has gotten better as well. But I want to see him kind of get a little bit better handling the rock and doing those pick and rolls. I saw him do that in a couple games. Got right into the mid range because I don't even think the defense was game plan for Saddiq Bey doing a pick and roll into the mid range and pulling up. He was so wide open and hitting. You know, I forget which game it was, but it's like I kind of want to see a little bit more of that out of Saddiq Bey to see where that takes his maturation and his development further. But he's one of those guys that I just think he's kind of hitting his stride. And I believe post All-Star break, when these guys kind of get a rest, get a break, start to learn how to ride the ebbs and flows more of the season, I think you're going to see fresh legs. You're going to see a lot of what we know these guys have been putting in start to really, really, really come to fruition and pay off in that second half of the season, maybe even beforehand.
Well, let me say this too. And I always like to bring it back to people who are casual hoopers because they have these expectations of NBA players, but don't have the same expectation of themselves. What do you do when you go out and you play at Lifetime or just a pickup ball anywhere? What's the first thing you do? You start shooting on the rim, and you got to get used to the rim. Why? Because you haven't played on that rim.
Bro, I got now when I get to the rim.
So do you need 2 or 3 shots and you're good and you say, okay, ball up, let's go? No, you probably want to take about 10, 15, 20, whatever, so you get your rhythm back. So what happens when you win that first game or you lose that first game and you have to play at the opposite rim? Well, it's going to take you some time to get used to that rim, that scenery, that whatever on that end of the court. Yeah. What happens when you change players if you lose that game? Then you're playing with a completely different group of guys who do different stuff than that first game or two that you played. All of these are things that Saddiq is going through.
You're right.
The second group is different than the first group. They run differently. They got different people. They need him to do different things with that group than the first group. You need to practice your role within that group. You're still a shooter, but sometimes you might have to do different things with Killian than you did with Cade at the beginning of the year. So all of those changes, if you had kept everything the same with Saddiq and his numbers had dipped, then there might be cause for concern. There's no cause for concern. Not with Saddiq. Not with Saddiq. If you tell me Stewart's numbers are fluctuating or Bagley's or Bogdanovich's numbers are fluctuating a little bit, okay, maybe. That's Saddiq. That's not the guy I'm worried about. Give me something better than that. Give me somebody else to worry about, not Saddiq.
I like that. I think the person to worry about just a little bit. You know, obviously the breaking news yesterday was Marvin Bagley in his hand. I wanted to talk a little bit. I know I'm going to talk with Jeff about the Andre Drummond comments. Shout out to Mike Curtis. He got to talk to Andre of the Detroit News, their Pistons beat writer. He got to talk to Andre Drummond. We're going to get more into that a little bit later on Pistons Trends with Jeff. But Marvin Bagley, man, What do we make out of Marvin Bagley, the injury? You see fans all over the place. Some are like, "Yo, this sucks because he's supposed to be part of the core of the team moving forward." You continue to say that 2 years, that kind of contract you get, that 2-year extension, like full 3 year, it gave the Pistons opportunity to have him here and to assess him while they were in the window. So I like Bagley, but what does this mean for the Pistons moving forward as it relates to what they do with the big men, what they do with the roster makeup?
Well, it's break glass in case of emergency for Nerlens.
Yeah.
And that's why you got him. That's why you got him. But it is also it's just another thing. But this is the redundancy that you had, and people always talked about the big men, and there are too many big men, and how are you going to find time? Where's Bagley going to fit in all of this? Well, you know what? Now you got other options with that, so it's not as big a deal as it could have been. So as much as people want to crack on Troy and say and criticize and do things, he had created this roster for just such a thing, such a time as this, we'll say, to be able to handle these injuries and it not be a huge blow to what they're trying to do. So again, I'm not concerned about it. For Bagley, it's not a ridiculous contract of a guy that you're just like, wow, we paid him all this money and now he's hurt again and now we got to deal with it's this is what it is. And maybe I'm the bad guy because I'm just resigned to this season being just about development and show me highlights, show me box scores, show me trends of what guys are doing. And if you want to tell me that something's wrong there, then in their developmental stuff, then I'll be concerned. But if they're losing games, I mean,
yeah,
whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's not I got bigger fish to fry than that.
Yeah, especially in a year with the type of draft prospects that we have. It's just like, okay, at some point in time, we can react to every game. We could definitely do that. I don't know what that solves for anybody. I don't know what we gain from that. I don't know how that makes the Pistons better. I like you noted, like firing Casey for why? Like what exactly would that do for the Pistons right now? While all the young players are saying that they're going out there to fight for Casey, they're going out there to put to work the good things that they know he's teaching them. Those are the things I'm talking about. Look, whether we believe he's the guy for the next aspect or transition of this team, who knows? We saw the Woodward Pistons go through 3 coaches? Well, Rick Carlisle and then Larry Brown. And then even Larry Brown didn't wind up saying, I'm going through teams. We saw coaches do the same. I believe that Casey, when he was hired here, we talked about this before, was brought in to win now. And when he took the team to the playoffs with a roster that everybody said was kind of badly put together. Everybody stated that. But it was just enough, and it had enough NBA guys, NBA vets, guys who were making all NBA teams and whatnot on the roster to be able to make something happen. That's what Casey did in the first year when he was brought in and hired to win now. Now, we all know that he has this track record of having the ability to, develop young individual players from an individual standpoint. But it's always been yet to be seen how that can work out if it was a full team that was like that, like a young team. I don't think you're going to find really any coach out there that with tearing a team down to the studs the way that Stefanski and then Troy did, taking a complete sledgehammer to it and turning over the complete roster almost every year. Almost every season Troy's been here, that roster has changed by plus 5 players to the regular rotation. I just don't know, man. I just don't know.
It's not little dabs here of you're tinkering with the second unit. Every year has been massive changes to the starting lineup. And we talked about defensively what Jeremy Grant's value was, but you take that out and now you've got to refocus and do something different with the starting lineup there and bringing in Boyan late and saying, okay, now work around this dude who has a completely different game. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know what people's expectations are, but generally I'm on the side of people need to temper their expectations because it's not realistic.
Yeah. And then when you temper the expectations, I believe that then starts and creates the space for constructive dialogue. Where do the Pistons go from here? if you believe that there is a better coach, because what I am seeing and across a lot of our comments, especially on Facebook and such, a lot of people are starting to state, okay, if there's a place for them in the front office, put them in the front office. But it's like, okay, if you're going to state certain things, who's coming in and doing a better job? Rod,
who you gonna get?
Rod, you asked this. That's what I'm saying. I'm asking the people, what's the better scenario? So if everything went according to plan, we can't predict injuries. So you got to let the injuries stick. The injuries stick, right? If Casey did everything perfect that y'all thought he should be doing, how many more wins or losses does this team have or don't have? If he did everything you guys said, is this team now in the play-in? You know what I mean? Without Cade, without Bagley, you know what I'm saying? If it's not about wins and losses, and if it is a development year, which one of these players, how do you stack this? Is he doing a good job with Ivy? Is he doing a good job with Jalen Durham? Is he doing a good job with the development of Isaiah Stewart, who's shooting almost 40% from three? Is he doing a good job with, before Cade Cunningham got hurt? We saw the stats he was putting up. Is he doing a good job with Killian Hayes? These are the things that we know he's brought in to do. Because if they brought in another coach, Rod, and Dwane Casey did not develop these players, are we starting over again? After 3, 4, or 5 years?
Ask the questions, man, because people want this to just be their video game. That players don't have culture. There's no culture on your 2K team. There's no culture. There's no hey, our coaches, we have a new coach and we have to start all over. There's no we've done enough of this losing and we've just had enough. There's no conversation like that. And this isn't a video game. But so you're bringing up the point about Duren and developing players. Duren today versus Duren at the draft, they didn't think that he would be serviceable like this year, that he would be in the roster and playing, much less starting. If you and I gotta go back and listen and look. I don't think anybody asked him or fathomed that Duren would be starting games this year. That man is starting games. That's
Jeff
and doing well. Double-digit rebounds, figuring out ways to get double-digit scoring. Kid is 19.
He didn't start because he was forced into it. He started, just due to injury, because it would be different if Stu and Bags and these people were hurt. He took the starting job. You know what I mean?
Let me get some splits. Go ahead. I'm gonna look at some splits. I'm gonna look at starting splits.
I'm serious, bro. Duren went out there and absolutely took the starting job over. Jeff was talking about it too. He was like, I'm gonna just be for real with you guys. I was one of those guys who thought maybe a little bit of G League. We didn't know what was going on. Then you start hearing Rasheed Wallace talk about, I was having dunk contests with Jalen Duren in practice. This is what our mentality and our mindset was about. And that's what I hope, with Duren. I want to see him, like you stated, get a little bit more of that, that know that you're the man. And Shaq talked about that too with his father. You said you want to see him kind of bring that dominance to the paint that we saw, the mindset that Shaq played with. And Shaq said he got that mindset from his pops, who told him, I don't want you doing laying the ball up. Look what are you doing? Yeah. Don't everything, tear the rim down and this and the other. Do you know how big you are? And to hear Shaq actually ponder the fact that he didn't know who he was, when my whole life I've only seen Shaq be the man. I've seen him literally be man of steel. Some of these guys get themselves nicknames and get tattoos. You're like, bro, take that off. You know what I mean? But Shaq was one of those guys that you were just like, oh, this is the man of steel. This is literally that dude. And he said it took his dad telling him, what are you doing? You are the man. And for Jalen Duren, he's the man. Is there some polish in his offensive game that might be needed? We saw that with Shaq early on. That didn't matter to the physicality that he was going to bring to that game once something was unlocked. I don't know. Duren excites me. I want to see him use that body and that frame, that athleticism a lot more because I like being excited.
13 games as a starter, 8.6 points, 11.4 rebounds. Offensive rating, 134. I mean,
what? He's definitely playing to his skill set. He's playing within himself. Oh man, these players that show and exhibit the ability to be dependable, high-level players, but can just fit into roles as well. That's awesome. That's what I actually like about guys like Killian Hayes, Saddiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, is that these guys have all exhibited the ability to go out there and be, to some degree, like Killian Hayes, a specialist with playmaking and defense. Jalen Duren, a specialist on rebounding. Saddiq Bey, he's been a specialist as it relates to getting to the free throw line this year, getting into the paint, leading the Pistons. Realistically, I got to check it again, but at one point in time, he was one of the higher free throw rates on the squad, on the team. We talked about, he's taking that step, that filling in that place that Jeremy Grant kind of left, because he was the previous free throw attempts leader for the squad. And so it's like, as I see these guys you can depend on Stu now. Like when he shoots the three, I don't hitch. People in the arena are like, oh, that's going in.
Yeah, if everyone feels like it's going in.
Yeah, it's feeling like it's going in. Like all these guys, they all have some type of trait that I know. As long as contracts don't become an issue, I see a role on this team for all these players, whether they are starting or not. And I believe that they need to look at themselves the way that Casey has continued to say. Just go out there and do your job. Go out there for the minutes you get and do your job. Absolutely go out there and cause havoc. The one thing I will level with fans, as we come to a close, I didn't know if you had anything else that you wanted to show.
No, that was it. It's just have some perspective on this and understand what the season is. And if you're worried about wins and losses, the only reason you should be worried about wins and losses is if you're doing tankathon and you're trying to see what the percentages on the draft pick are. That's the only reason you should be doing it.
Sick for Vic. I remember you coined that. TM Rod Beard. we sick for Vic. I like that one the best, man. I've heard some pretty crazy ones, man, as it relates to the tank of it all. But I will level with fans. When you see someone like a Hamidou Diallo come in and you see the energy pick up, you see the hustle pick up, you see certain things go, then you're like, all right, you really want to see this out of all your guys. And I don't think they understand, like, with Hamidou Diallo, who's been in the league for a little bit, he himself questioned, am I a vet or am I still a young guy at the beginning of the season? He said, I guess they're telling me to be a vet. And you see him coming in with this kind of stoic ability to do what we saw guys in the past, like Anthony Tolliver and Will Bynum and those vets do, just play the game of basketball the right way. Yep. And with the young players, it's not that they're not playing hard. I really was like, you know what, let me take a step back and see, because these fans are like, oh, they need to play hard. This is on the coach. They need to play scrappy. This is on the coach. You know what I see them doing? Playing scrappy and then getting in foul trouble. Playing hard and then getting frustrated. Like, they get frustrated. Like, dang, I missed the shot.
Just do you. It's real easy.
Just do you. And that's one of the things I noticed. Hami's coming in, and I'm not really seeing him do, or like Ivy. He gets frustrated, man. And it will take him sometimes out of plays. And I seen Hami one play, like, bro, get back in the play. Like, come on, let's just go. Don't worry about it. And so it's like, I'm not questioning their effort. I believe that as they continue in film study and as they look at these older players get on the court and show them how it's supposed to be done, like, I'll see Corey Joseph complain for a foul shot. You know what I mean? Complain, hey, where's the foul? But I don't ever see him do it realistically when the play is in session. Like, all right, I gotta get back and play defense. You'll see him kind of do this in the run. Right. Ivy and some of the younger players, and even Duren, sometimes you'll see them like talking to the ref up the court. And it was something that we saw Tayshaun Prince do as a young player. And as he got older, you would see him sometimes do this, but still be running up the court, rather than in his younger years where he's literally talking to the ref all the way down the court. Right. So it's like, I think when we see these guys kind of focus in, get out of their heads a little bit, learn this game a little bit more, I do believe that you'll see a little bit more of what we equate to the hustle stats, the getting on the 50-50 balls, diving on the floor more. I saw that more in one of the last home games, and fans was getting dived on and everything. So I will level with fans there. I want to see more of it. I've noticed that when guys like Kami come in, it picks up. And hopefully the rest of the guys, they get in there and they do it. Hayes, he's been one of those guys too, but obviously he's been suspended the last 3 weeks. So it'd be good to see him come back. It'd be really good. So I think that's a show, man.
That's enough, man.
Some people will be mad again.
We hit the points that we were supposed to hit, but it's the truth of the matter is that none of this stuff is the end of the world. You want to see at the end of the year that there's been some development with some of these key guys, and we're seeing it already. And that's the job. That's all Casey is supposed to do, is if we were looking at guys who were just bums and not playing well at all, then we could have something else to say. But I'm just not that guy. Maybe I'm the wrong one to ask on that, but I'm just not that guy.
Hey, you know what? I rock with that, man. I rock with that. And so I know we didn't do it in the beginning. So definitely on the way out, we're gonna get that drum roll going. But for Jeff Iafrate, Mr. Everything, for Detroit News. Wait, no. I gotta do it right. Let me start over. For Jeff Iafrate, Mr. Everything, I am Brandon Dent, Detroit Kool-Aid. And for the legend, we get the drum roll going. Hey, yo, Detroit News, Rod Beard, brother, as always. Thank you for joining the show. Woodward Pistons podcast, man. It's a fun time every single time. And we're definitely going to get Jeff on. He's going to comment on a little bit of what we talked about as well. But we're going to go through and try and parse the development of these young players this year and how much we believe that responsibility has been on Casey or not. Does he get any credit for what we've seen? And we're going to try and level with fans, see if they'll accept that this year's a development year and see how they're seeing it that way.
Let me take a wild guess here. No.
We're gonna see if we can make it work, man. But hey, look, till next time, you guys. Thank you for checking in. Definitely put down in the comments, how do you split the blame? Let us know. Troy, Coach Casey, the players, put it down in the comments.